Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take complex topics, really plunge into the source material, and hopefully transform them into insights that make sense for you.
Absolutely, trying to cut through the noise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And today we're diving headfirst into something that's, well, it's both incredibly exciting, but maybe also a little unsettling. The booming world of artificial intelligence.
It's everywhere.
You hear constantly about AI revolutionizing, everything, how we work, how we live. But beneath all that promise, there's this other side, a flip side, that's really starting to come into focus.
Yeah, a side that maybe isn't talked about quite as much.
Precisely. So we've gathered some pretty compelling sources that really highlight two key things about where AI is heading right now.
Okay.
First, there's this just unprecedented amount of money pouring in, fueling this incredible expansion. It's almost astronomical, changing markets as we speak.
A real frenzy, you could say.
Totally. And then the other side is the environmental footprint. Something often overlooked, but AI places significant demands on, our planet's most vital resources.
Right, the physical cost of the virtual world.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to pull out the really important nuggets from these sources. We want to help you understand both the huge opportunities AI offers, but also the very real, substantial challenges it's creating.
Balancing the hype with the reality.
That's the goal. So whether you're fascinated by market dynamics, maybe the idea of bubbles, or you're really concerned about sustainability, or maybe you just want to be better informed about the true cost, the holistic cost of our tech future, well, this deep dive is for you.
We'll try and get past the headlines.
Yeah, we'll cut through that hype, look at some pretty stark warnings from industry leaders, break down this staggering infrastructure build-out that's happening, and really face those critical environmental questions AI forces us to ask.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this first part then, the AI sector. It's just buzzing with investment, right? A whirlwind of capital. Valuations are soaring to heights that are, frankly, hard to comprehend.
Yeah, you see headlines almost daily. Tiny startups, maybe just a few people, an idea.
Exactly. 3 people and an idea, as someone put it.
Yeah.
And suddenly, they're attracting billions in funding. It seems a bit wild.
It does. And what's really striking, maybe even a bit of a reality check, is that Sam Altman himself.
Right. The CEO of OpenAI, a company right at the very heart of this boom.
Precisely. Even he has openly expressed, let's say, some significant caution about this whole investment climate.
Which is pretty remarkable considering his position.
It really is. I mean, he's probably one of the biggest champions for AI's potential out there, but he's been surprisingly blunt about the money side of things.
So what did he actually say?
Well, speaking to reporters, I think it was at a dinner in San Francisco and then in other interviews too, he basically called it insane.
Insane.
Yeah, his word. Insane for these tiny startups, the 3 people and an idea kind, to be getting this huge funding at these incredibly high valuations. He flat out said it was not rational behavior.
Wow, that's direct.
Very. And he issued this really powerful warning. I think I have the quote here.
Yeah.
He said, "Someone is going to lose a phenomenal amount of money. We don't know who, and a lot of people are going to make a phenomenal amount of money."
Phenomenal. That really captures the scale, doesn't it? Both the potential upside and the downside risk.
Absolutely. It's not just some casual remark. It's a pretty profound statement from someone who's right in the thick of it, basically acknowledging that this level of investment might not be sustainable across the board.
Did he compare it to anything? Like, has this happened before?
He did, yeah. He drew a really insightful comparison to historical market manias, specifically the dot-com bubble back in the late 90s.
Okay, I remember that well.
Right, and his point was, when bubbles happen, smart people get overexcited about a kernel of truth. He used the dot-com era as the example. Tech was really important. The internet was a really big deal. People got overexcited.
So the underlying technology is real. It's important.
Exactly. AI is undeniably transformative, just like the internet was. There's a fundamental truth there, huge potential. But he's suggesting the investor environment may be driven by that real excitement, but also a big dose of FOMO.
Fear of missing out. Yeah.
Has just gotten way ahead of itself, pushing valuations to levels that maybe aren't grounded in, realistic short-term profits or solid business models yet.
But he still believes in AI overall.
Oh, absolutely. That's the interesting part. Despite this caution about the investors, he firmly believes that on the whole, this would be a huge net win for the global economy. So his concern isn't really about the tech itself or its development path.
It's about the money, the possibly irrational flood of money chasing it right now.
Precisely, the financial exuberance.
So The bottom line from Altman seems to be, yes, AI is huge, transformative, and net win.
Yeah.
But this current investment frenzy, it might be setting a lot of people up for disappointment.
That's the takeaway. He's basically saying, look, not every AI startup that gets funded today is going to make it. A lot of them might just be riding this short-term speculative wave that won't actually lead to lasting value.
A sort of reality check from the inside?
A crucial one, I think,
No.
especially coming from him.
Okay. But, and this is a big but, despite Altman's warnings, the actual amount of money still flooding into AI, especially the infrastructure side, is just, well, you use the word staggering. And it really is.
It absolutely is. Let's just take OpenAI itself as an example. Reports from last year suggested they'd already spent something like $8.5 billion just on training their large language models and the staffing for those AI projects.
$8.5 billion just on training and people.
Yeah. And then you look at the operational costs. Some analysts estimate it costs maybe $700,000 a day just to keep ChatGPT running.
$700,000
Yeah.
every day.
That's the estimate. So this isn't just a one-off investment. It's this massive ongoing operational cost, a huge burn rate.
And the projections for the future, they're even bigger.
Right. Dramatically bigger. It paints this picture of just unparalleled capital intensity. The Information, which is a pretty solid tech news source, they projected OpenAI could burn through maybe $20 billion in cash flow by 2027.
$20 billion. Wow.
And to keep up with their plans, for advancing the tech and rolling it out, they're reportedly hoping for another $30 to $40 billion in funding from big players like SoftBank.
So tens of billions more needed.
But even that might be understating it. Altman himself confirmed OpenAI expects to spend, get this, trillions of dollars on data center construction in the not very distant future.
Trillions with a T.
Trillions with a T. He even made a joke about expecting a bunch of economists to wring their hands over that kind of spending.
I mean, I think anyone would wring their hands at trillions. That shifts the conversation entirely, doesn't it? From billions for software development to trillions for physical infrastructure.
Absolutely. It underscores the sheer, almost unimaginable scale of what they're planning. This isn't just software anymore. It's about fundamentally reshaping global physical infrastructure to actually support this AI.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's not just OpenAI thinking on this scale, right?
Yeah.
The whole market seems to be anticipating these colossal, unprecedented investments in AI infrastructure.
That's exactly right. This isn't an isolated case. We're seeing a broad consensus forming. Take Brookfield Asset Management, for example. They're a huge investment firm, and they've actually launched a dedicated strategy just for AI infrastructure.
Betting big on this trend, then.
Hugely. They put out this white paper with some frankly mind-boggling forecasts. They predict that total spending on AI-related infrastructure could top $7 trillion over the next 10 years.
7 trillion, again with the T. How does that even compare to anything?
Well, just for perspective, that's roughly the combined annual GDP of Germany and the UK for 1 year, just on AI infrastructure.
Okay, that's fast. How does that break down? Where does that 7 trillion go?
They break it down pretty clearly. About $4 trillion they see going into chips. That's the GPUs, the specialized processors, but also the factories, the fabs that make them, and the incredibly complex supply chains behind them.
Right.
Then another $2 trillion is earmarked for the AI data centers themselves, the actual buildings housing all this hardware.
Okay, so that's 6 trillion already.
Yep. Then a hefty $500 billion for power and transmission infrastructure because, as we'll get into, these things need unbelievable amounts of electricity.
That makes sense.
And finally, another $500 billion for what they call broader tech support, things like dedicated high-speed fiber optic networks, advanced cooling systems to stop everything from melting, and even the robotics needed to build and maintain these facilities.
So it's a whole ecosystem,
Yeah.
a completely new industrial complex almost.
That's a great way to put it. It's a massive, comprehensive financial commitment. And it's not just Brookfield saying this. Morgan Stanley, another major bank, they have independently projected about $3 trillion in global spending just on data centers and the related infrastructure between now and 2029.
3 trillion by 2029. Still huge numbers.
And they used a really interesting comparison. They called it an epic infrastructure boom akin to railroads and canals.
Wow, like 19th century transformative tech.
Exactly. That highlights just how foundational they see these investments being for the global economy. Think about how railroads changed everything, commerce, society.
Yeah?
They see AI infrastructure having that kind of systemic impact.
And what about the actual power capacity needed? Did Brookfield mention that?
They did. They expect these AI-focused data centers to account for about 15 gigawatts of power capacity by the end of this year. That's up significantly from roughly 7 gigawatts at the end of 2023.
Doubled in a year, basically.
Pretty much. And then, over the next decade, they anticipate another 75 gigawatts of AI data centers will be built,
75 more gigawatts.
bringing the total AI data center capacity to around 82 gigawatts by 2034. That's more than a tenfold increase in just a decade.
82 gigawatts.
Yeah.
How much power is that, really?
To put that in perspective, 82 gigawatts is roughly the entire current power consumption of a country like Australia.
The whole country,
Mhm.
just for AI data centers.
That's the projection. It really shows this monumental shift happening in global energy demand, all driven by AI. It's truly massive, sustained, and yeah, fundamentally transformative growth.
Okay, so we have the traditional VC money, the huge institutional investments going into companies like OpenAI and the physical infrastructure.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something else, a new front.
Yeah, beyond that traditional funding, there's this really fascinating and relatively new investment area that's opened up. People are calling them AI tokens.
AI tokens, what are those exactly? Crypto related?
Essentially, yes. They're digital assets, cryptocurrencies that combine AI capabilities with blockchain technology. The idea is to power decentralized applications or DAT apps.
Okay, decentralized, like what kind of application?
Well, things like data processing, where the computation is spread out across a network, not centralized. Or intelligent indexing of huge amounts of data. Even autonomous trading strategies that operate without direct human control. And one big one is sharing GPU power.
Sharing graphics card power, how does that work?
Basically, people or companies with spare GPU capacity can rent it out to others who need it for AI tasks, all managed decentrally through the blockchain and paid for with these tokens, kind of like Airbnb for computing power.
Interesting. And are these tokens, are people actually investing in them?
Oh yeah, big time. They've seen this absolutely dramatic surge in value lately, really catching the market's eye.
How dramatic.
Well, just recently, the whole AI token sector added nearly $10 billion in market capitalization. Some individual tokens shot up over 100% in just 7 days.
100% in a week.
Yeah, and the average rally for these tokens in 2024 has been reportedly over 2,900%.
2,900%, that's astronomical. What's driving that kind of frenzy?
There seem to be three main forces. First, just the general mainstream adoption of AI is exploding, right? NVIDIA hitting a $3 trillion market cap, tools like ChatGPT becoming common. AI feels real and inevitable now.
Okay, so general AI hype is lifting all boats.
Pretty much. Second, blockchain tech itself is emerging as potentially a really good fit for AI infrastructure. Why? Because it's transparent, it's decentralized, and you can program accountability into it using smart contracts.
How does that help AI?
Think about autonomous AI agents, like trading bots. If their actions are recorded on a blockchain, you have this immutable, verifiable audit trail. It builds trust because you don't need a central company vouching for it. The code and the ledger provide the proof. It allows AI to interact directly and securely, peer-to-peer.
Okay, transparency and trust. Makes sense. And the third driver.
Simple market dynamics, really. The sheer speed and size of these token rallies have grabbed attention, both from retail traders, individuals seeing those huge percentage gains.
Chasing the returns.
Exactly, but also from institutional investors, even sophisticated hedge funds. They're looking at AI-linked crypto as this new high-growth frontier, a way to get exposure beyond just buying tech stocks. It's diversification into this booming area.
Are there actual uses for these tokens yet, or is it mostly speculation?
It's moving beyond just speculation now. We're seeing some really interesting real-world use cases pop up. For instance, there's a company called Magic Labs. They launched Newton.
Newton?
Yeah, it's an AI assistant specifically for DeFi, decentralized finance investments. It can automatically manage your trading, earn interest for you, optimize strategies, all while keeping your info secure and anonymous, using AI in that trustless blockchain environment.
Okay, AI managing crypto investments.
Right. Then there's something called Pixel AI. It's a blockchain-based game where players earn rewards in their specific token, PIXAI, so AI is integrated right into the game mechanics and the economy.
Gaming and AI, got it.
And another one, GAIB, they introduced Aid Alpha. This is interesting. It's a digital asset, a token, whose value is backed by the actual income generated from renting out high-performance computer chips, those GPUs we talked about.
So you're investing directly in the demand for AI computing power.
Exactly. Without having to own the physical hardware yourself, it's a novel way to get exposure. And these tokens, they often do multiple things in their ecosystems. You use them to pay for services, they reward people for participating. Sometimes they even give you voting rights on how the platform develops. That utility helps drive demand.
So this incredible flood of money, whether it's traditional VC billions or these new crypto tokens surging, it's all fueled by this mix of FOMO, genuine belief in the tech,
Absolutely, a potent combination.
which creates this incredibly dynamic, maybe volatile market. And like Altman warned, there are going to be winners, but probably a lot of losers too.
Seems inevitable. His warning really resonates here. The companies building the core infrastructure, the foundational AI models, they'll likely stick around. But many of these smaller, maybe hype-driven ventures, those 3 people and an idea ones,
They might just be riding that short-term wave.
yeah, a wave that could easily crash, leaving them without lasting value. It's like that old saying about gold rushes.
The ones selling the shovels often make more money than the prospectors.
Exactly. The infrastructure builders might be the surest bet in the long run.
Okay, so that brings us to the next crucial point. All this money, these billions, maybe trillions, it's not just numbers on a screen, is it?
Yeah.
It's being turned into actual physical stuff,
Yeah.
infrastructure. And that has real-world demands.
Very real. And this is where the environmental side really comes into sharp focus.
So what does this huge investment scale actually mean for the planet? All these advanced AI models, whether they're training or just answering a simple query, they need massive computing power, right?
Massive. And that computing power needs immense amounts of electricity. It's turning out that energy, just raw power, is probably the single biggest bottleneck right now, a critical constraint on AI's growth.
A bottleneck, that's a strong word. Why is it so energy intensive?
You're absolutely right to call it a bottleneck. The energy needs are staggering, and they're escalating incredibly fast. Think about the chips themselves, the specialized AI chips, the GPUs, graphics processing units. They're the workhorses.
Right, NVIDIA's famous for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, these GPUs, they use roughly 10 times more energy than the traditional CPU chips that used to run everything. And they throw off way more heat, too.
10 times more energy per chip.
Approximately, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's getting more extreme. NVIDIA's next-gen chip, the Rubin, which is expected next year, it's projected to need 600 kilowatts of power per rack of server.
600 kilowatts per rack. How does that compare?
It's a 12-fold increase compared to their H100 models, which only came out in 2022.
A 12x jump in power needs in just a couple of years. That's exponential.
It really is, and that creates huge challenges, not just for supplying the power, but for cooling these things down.
So what are the overall projections? How much electricity are we talking about globally for AI?
The forecasts are pretty alarming, honestly. They paint a clear picture of major strain on global power grids. Some researchers estimate that AI's energy costs alone could hit somewhere between 85 and 134 terawatt hours by 2027.
Terawatt hours. How much is that in context?
That would be nearly 0.5%, 0.5% of all current global electricity usage, just for AI.
0.5% of the world's electricity. That's significant for one technology.
It is. And the International Energy Agency, the IEA, they forecast global electricity demand growing 4% over the next 3 years, and they specifically called out data centers as a major driver of that increase, alongside industry and general electrification.
And in the US specifically.
In the US, the projections suggest our energy consumption could grow by an amount equivalent to California's entire annual power usage by 2027, mostly driven by these super energy-hungry data centers and the manufacturing supporting them.
Equivalent to adding another California to the grid.
That's the scale we're talking about. Just in 2024, U.S. electricity generation went up 3%, and data centers were a dominant force behind that jump. Globally, data centers used about 460 terawatt hours back in 2022.
460.
To visualize that, if data centers were a country, they'd be the 11th largest electricity consumer in the world, somewhere between Saudi Arabia and France.
Wow. Okay. That's a massive footprint already, and it's growing incredibly fast.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned training versus inference before. Is there a big difference in energy use there?
Oh, absolutely crucial difference. Training these huge models, the LLMs, means feeding them just mountains of data so they learn patterns. That process uses enormously more energy than what's called inference.
Inference being just using the AI, asking it a question.
Exactly. Running a single prediction or query on the model once it's already trained. Training is like building the skyscraper. Inference is running the lights and elevators inside it every day.
Okay, so training is the big upfront energy cost.
Huge. For example, Training one large AI model is estimated to produce something like 626,000 pounds. That's 283 metric tons of carbon dioxide.
283 tons of CO2. What does that compare to?
That's like 300 round-trip flights between New York and San Francisco, or almost 5 times the lifetime emissions of an average car.
Wow. For training one model.
Yep, GPT-3, the famous one, reportedly released 552 metric tons of CO2 just during its initial training phase.
But you said inference is where the future demand is.
Yes, and this is key. While training is incredibly intensive, it's the inference, the day-to-day use by millions or billions of people that will drive the vast majority of the future energy demand.
Because it happens constantly.
Exactly. That skyscraper analogy, the construction energy is massive, but the energy to operate at 247 year after year quickly overtakes it. A typical ChatGPT query, for instance, uses about 5 times more electricity than a simple Google search, roughly 0.34 watt-hours.
5 times more per query.
Yeah. Now imagine, just hypothetically, if you put ChatGPT or something like it into every single Google search worldwide. That alone could potentially use 10 terawatt-hours of electricity each year.
10 terawatt-hours.
That's about the annual energy use of 1.5 million average EU residents. Just from adding AI to search queries, that's the staggering scale of ongoing daily AI energy consumption we might be looking at.
Okay. This really raises a huge question then. This exponential growth in energy demand.
Yeah.
What does it actually do to our existing power grids? They weren't built for this kind of sudden, massive surge, were they?
No, they absolutely were not, and the impact is already becoming very real and quite profound. This increased demand from AI data centers is putting immense strain on the grid.
How do we see that strain? What are the consequences?
Well, we're seeing direct effects like coal-fired power plants, ones that were scheduled to shut down, now having their closing dates pushed back, sometimes by a decade or more.
Keeping coal plants open longer because of AI demand.
In places like Kansas City, West Virginia, the Salt Lake City area, yes, simply to meet this surging demand. And look at Northern Virginia. It's become the world's biggest hub for AI data centers.
Right, data center alley.
Exactly. Well, there, the waiting time to connect a new large facility, say, one needing over 100 megawatts to the grid, it's already stretched out to 7 years.
7 years just to get plugged in.
That's how overloaded the infrastructure is and how slow it is to build new capacity. Utilities across the U.S. are facing the biggest jump in electricity demand they've seen in decades, and AI is the primary driver.
And this must impact companies' environmental goals too, right? Their carbon footprints.
Absolutely. It has a direct, measurable effect. Look at Google. In 2024, they actually missed some key targets in their own net zero plan. Their greenhouse gas emissions went up 48%, and they directly attributed that increase to the growth in their AI operations.
Nearly 50% increase linked to AI.
Wow. And Microsoft and Meta reported similar bumps in their carbon footprints, also explicitly linked to scaling up their AI infrastructure and usage. It shows the immediate environmental cost of this rapid acceleration.
This sounds a lot like that paradox you mentioned, Jevons paradox.
It's a perfect illustration of the Jevons paradox. The core idea, remember, is that making something more efficient often doesn't lead to less consumption overall. Instead, it leads to more consumption because the thing becomes cheaper, better, or more useful, so people use it more.
Like the steam engine example. More efficient engines
meant more coal got burned, not less, because steam power became so much more widespread and vital to industry back in the 1860s.
So even if AI models get more efficient per calculation.
Exactly. Even with that tenfold annual drop in the cost per unit of intelligence that Altman mentioned for OpenAI, the sheer scale of adoption, the increasing complexity of the models, the new applications popping up everywhere, it's all driving this ever-increasing, almost insatiable demand for energy. Efficiency gains are being swamped by usage growth. It makes tackling the environmental footprint a constant uphill battle.
Okay, so energy is a massive issue, but you hinted there was more. AI's appetite isn't just for electricity.
No, unfortunately not. Beyond electricity, AI has this other huge appetite for another absolutely vital resource, water.
Water? Why do data centers need so much water?
Cooling. Those powerful chips, especially packed densely together in data centers, generate incredible amounts of heat. They have to be kept meticulously cool, otherwise they'd literally overheat, malfunction, or even melt.
Right, so how do they cool them?
It relies on these really elaborate cooling systems. Sometimes it's powerful air conditioning, which itself uses a lot of energy, but often, especially in large facilities, it involves pumping massive amounts of water, potentially thousands or even millions of gallons through pipes that run alongside the servers to dissipate the heat.
Millions of gallons of water just for cooling servers.
Potentially, yes. It's a huge, often hidden environmental cost, and it's becoming increasingly controversial, especially in water-stressed areas.
What do the projections look like for AI's water use? Are they as alarming as the energy ones?
They are pretty alarming, yeah. They point to really significant pressure on water resources in the future. One recent paper projected that AI globally could withdraw somewhere between 4.2 and 6.6 billion cubic meters of water in the year 2027 alone.
4.2 to 6.6 billion cubic meters. How much water is that?
To put it in perspective, that range is more than half the total annual water withdrawal of the entire United Kingdom.
Wow, more than half the UK's water use just for AI by 2027.
That's the projection. And looking at specific examples gives you a sense too. Training GPT-3, just that one model's training phase, might have used around 700,000 liters of water.
700,000 liters, that's a lot for one training run.
It is. And then for inference, the day-to-day use. Just getting 10 to 50 medium-length answers from GPT-3, depending on location and conditions, is estimated to consume about 500 milliliters of fresh water. A standard water ball's worth.
Half a liter for maybe a couple dozen answers. That seems small individually.
It does, but think about the billions of queries happening every single day across all AI platforms globally. It adds up incredibly fast. The cumulative effect is staggering.
Are companies seeing this impact on their water use too, like with emissions?
Definitely. Microsoft reported their overall water consumption jumped 34% in 1 year, directly linked to AI growth. Google's went up 20% for similar reasons.
34% increase for Microsoft.
And think about the local impact. There was a proposed Microsoft data center near Phoenix, Arizona, a place already facing serious water scarcity issues. Estimates suggested it could use up to 56 million gallons of fresh water each year.
56 million gallons in the desert.
Right, that's roughly equivalent to the annual water footprint of about 670 average American families.
Okay.
And in one town in Iowa, a Microsoft data center cluster was found to be using 6% of the entire town's fresh water supply.
6% of a town's water. Okay, that really brings it home. This isn't just an abstract global number. It directly impacts local communities and their water access.
Exactly. That's why it's sparking these intense environmental debates and raising serious questions about resource sustainability and fairness.
Is there anything they can do about this water consumption? Any mitigation strategies?
There is one main strategy being explored: location, location, location. Specifically, building data centers in much colder climates.
Use the cold air for cooling.
Precisely. Using the naturally cold ambient air or even cold water sources can drastically reduce the need for energy-intensive mechanical chillers and massive water evaporation for cooling. Meta actually pioneered this quite early, building a big data center way up in Luleå, northern Sweden, back in 2011.
Averaging the Arctic chill.
Basically, yeah. And more recently, Google announced a huge expansion, 4.5 billion euros for its data center campus in Hamina, Finland. That facility is specifically designed to use cold seawater from the Baltic Sea for its cooling systems.
Using seawater instead of fresh water. That makes sense.
It does. It dramatically cuts down on the freshwater impact. But of course, this approach isn't a silver bullet. You need to be in the right geographic location, and you need the infrastructure to handle pumping and managing large volumes of seawater, which has its own challenges like corrosion.
So a potential solution, but not universally applicable.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered massive energy use, massive water use. Are there other environmental costs associated with this AI boom?
Yes, the costs don't stop there. We also need to think about the hardware itself, the physical stuff. The chips, the servers, the racks, the cables. All of it has a significant environmental footprint across its whole life cycle.
From making it to throwing it away.
Exactly. From mining the raw materials to manufacturing the components to eventually disposing of it all.
Let's talk about disposal first. E-waste is already a huge problem, isn't it?
A massive and growing problem. The incredibly rapid pace of AI development means hardware becomes obsolete much faster. Newer, more powerful chips come out constantly, making older generations less efficient or even unusable for the latest AI tasks. This accelerates the cycle of replacement and disposal.
So AI makes tech outdated even quicker.
It seems to be a major driver. In 2022, the world generated a staggering 62 million metric tons of electronic waste, e-waste, and less than a quarter of that was properly collected and recycled.
62 million tons,
Yeah.
mostly unrecycled.
And that number is growing by about 2.6 million tons every year. We're on track to hit 82 million tons annually by 2030. AI is projected to add significantly to that pile, maybe somewhere between 1.2 million and 5 million metric tons of additional e-waste in total by 2030.
That could be up to 12% of all e-waste globally, just from AI obsolescence.
That's the potential scale, yeah. Driven by that constant need for the latest, most powerful hardware.
And what about the other end? The manufacturing, the raw materials.
That's another major impact. Building these data centers and the components inside them requires huge quantities of raw materials. Just to give you an idea of the intensity, making a single standard 2-kilogram laptop requires processing around 800 kilograms of raw materials.
800 kilos of materials for one small computer.
That's the estimate. And those critical AI chips, the GPUs, they rely on specific rare earth elements. Mining these elements is often incredibly environmentally damaging. It can lead to habitat destruction, serious water pollution from chemical runoff, and significant carbon emissions from the mining and processing itself.
So a hidden cost in the materials themselves. Is there any potential upside here? Can AI help with this problem?
There is some speculation, yeah. Some argue that AI itself could eventually help mitigate the e-waste problem. For instance, using AI to power more sophisticated robot recycling systems that can better identify and sort valuable or hazardous materials from e-waste streams.
AI helping to clean up its own mess, potentially.
Potentially down the line, but right now that's still largely a future prospect. The scale of the waste being generated by AI development far, far outweighs the current capabilities of AI-driven recycling. So it's maybe a future counterbalance, but definitely not an immediate solution to the problem we're creating now.
Okay, so the environmental picture, energy, water, materials, waste, it looks pretty challenging, to say the least. How is the industry responding? Are they just ignoring this, or are they trying to find solutions?
What's really fascinating here, I think, is that the industry is very aware of this energy bottleneck in particular. They see it as a fundamental threat to their growth. And they're not just sitting back, they're pursuing some incredibly ambitious, maybe even historic solutions to try and meet these power demands.
Historic solutions? Like what?
Well, one of the most striking developments is this sudden, quite dramatic revival of interest in nuclear power.
Nuclear? Really? After decades of it being somewhat out of favor.
Absolutely. Look at Microsoft. September 2024, they announced this groundbreaking deal with Constellation Energy to actually reopen the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania.
3 Mile Island, the one that had the accident.
The very same one, Unit 1, which wasn't involved in the 1979 accident. If it gets approved by regulators, Microsoft will buy 100% of its power output, 835 megawatts for 20 years, specifically for their data centers.
Buying an entire nuclear plant's output.
That's the plan. That 835 megawatts could power around 800,000 homes. It's a huge commitment to a single carbon-free baseload power source. The estimated cost to restart it is about $1.6 billion, relying partly on U.S. tax breaks.
Are there other examples?
Yes. The U.S. government and the state of Michigan are pouring almost $2 billion into reopening another nuclear plant, the Palisades reactor, hopefully by late 2025. That plant only closed in 2022. So these aren't just minor tweaks, it's a major strategic pivot towards nuclear, specifically to power AI and data centers.
A nuclear revival driven by AI's energy needs. That's quite a headline. What about renewables?
There's a huge push there too, definitely. OpenAI, for example, is planning something called Stargate Norway. It's a massive new data center they want to build right next to a big hydropower plant near Bergen, directly tapping into clean energy.
Building data centers where the clean power is.
Makes sense, right? And Brookfield, that investment firm we mentioned, they're investing heavily too. $10 billion for an AI data center in Sweden. Another $20 billion, that's maybe $23 billion, committed to AI infrastructure in France over 5 years, with a big focus on integrating renewable energy sources.
Okay, so nuclear and renewables. Anything more out there?
Well, yeah, we're even seeing some really speculative, almost sci-fi solutions starting to emerge. There are startups, like one called StarCloud, based in DC, that are seriously working on building solar-powered data centers in space.
Data centers in orbit, powered by the sun.
That's the idea. Escape Earth's energy grid constraints entirely. Tap into constant solar power 24/7. It sounds futuristic, but people are actively developing it.
Wow, the urgency seems really high then, if they're considering space data centers.
The urgency within the industry is palpable. Anthropic, they make the Claude chatbot. They recently predicted the U.S. needs to build an incredible 50 gigawatts of new power plants by 2028 just to keep up with data center demand.
50 gigawatts by 2028. How much is that?
That's roughly twice the peak electricity usage of Great Britain on a typical day.
Twice the UK's power usage. needed just for U.S. data centers in the next few years.
That's their forecast. And they're framing this need for new power plants as nothing less than a national security and economic imperative. They're calling for dramatic cuts to regulations and bureaucracy, even leasing government land to get this infrastructure built fast. It's almost like a wartime mobilization footing.
National security linked to data center power. That really changes the framing.
It does. And speaking of massive projects, there's the Stargate project we touched on earlier.
Right. OpenAI, Oracle, SoftBank, building AI supercomputers.
Exactly. It's this multi-billion-dollar initiative. SoftBank, for their part, bought that huge former Foxconn factory in Lordstown, Ohio, for $375 million, specifically to build the AI servers for Stargate.
Why that facility?
It's massive, 6.2 million square feet, and crucially, it already has significant power infrastructure in place, plus lots of land for expansion. SoftBank CEO Masayoshi Son pledged an immediate $100 billion towards data centers and the energy facilities needed for Stargate.
$100 billion. Just like that.
An almost unbelievable commitment. Now, there have been some reports of slowdowns, maybe related to U.S. tariff policies or financing hurdles.
So maybe not quite immediate.
Well, SoftBank strongly denies any funding problems. They emphasize this is a massive long-term play, a foundational piece of the global AI economy they're building. The scale remains immense, even if the exact timeline shifts a bit.
And it's not just SoftBank. Google's spending huge amounts too.
Oh, yeah. Alphabet, Google's parent company, they're planning to spend around $75 billion in the next year alone on data centers and the power plants needed to run them.
$75 billion in 1 year. Just Google.
The sheer scale of investment purely in energy infrastructure for AI is just. It's not just unprecedented in the tech world, it really does rival major national infrastructure projects from the past century.
It really underscores how critical energy has become.
Absolutely fundamental. A U.S. public policy group put out a report in 2024 saying that prioritizing reliable, abundant electricity is the bedrock for maintaining America's economic and tech leadership in the 21st century, because AI and other new tech demand so much power.
And the New York Times editorial.
Yeah, they put it very powerfully. Electricity is more than just a utility, it's the bedrock of the digital era. If the United States truly wants to secure its leadership in AI, it must equally invest in the energy systems that power it.
So it's being framed not just as a business need, but a strategic national imperative, like building the first power grids or the highway system.
Exactly, that kind of foundational importance.
Okay, so the industry is trying these massive, ambitious energy solutions. But what about the other side of the coin? We talked about AI's potential to help with environmental problems. Is that still a factor?
It definitely is. While AI has this undeniable growing footprint, the argument is still very much alive that the technology also holds significant potential to help us address climate issues and create innovative environmental solutions.
So AI is part of the solution, not just the problem.
That's the argument from proponents, yes. They point to AI's ability to give us much better, more accurate weather forecasting, which helps with disaster prevention and tracking climate change impacts.
Okay, better predictions.
Also, AI could significantly improve how we manage our electricity grids, making them more efficient, reducing energy waste, and crucially, helping integrate intermittent renewable sources like solar and wind more smoothly.
Optimizing the grid for renewables. That's important.
Very. Plus, AI can accelerate the discovery of new materials. Maybe materials that are less resource-intensive to produce or have better properties for things like batteries or carbon capture. Greener manufacturing processes, too.
Have we seen actual examples of this happening?
We have. Google, for instance, often highlights how its AI can help mitigate climate change effects, like predicting floods much earlier or optimizing traffic light timings in cities to reduce congestion and vehicle emissions.
Okay, those are practical examples. Anything more fundamental?
Yes, there are some really interesting scientific applications emerging. There's an AI tool called Sleep that's being used in genetic engineering research. It helps scientists identify plant characteristics that could improve how well plant root systems sequester carbon from the atmosphere.
So using AI to design plants that fight climate change better.
Essentially, yes, turning plants into more efficient carbon sinks. And another big one is the Open Catalyst project led by Meta. They used machine learning to rapidly screen millions of potential materials to find suitable, low-cost electrocatalysts.
Electrocatalysts. For what?
for making better, cheaper batteries to store renewable energy. That's absolutely critical if we want to move away from fossil fuels, because we need ways to store solar and wind power for when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing.
Right, grid-scale batteries.
Exactly. AI could also potentially make complex global supply chains much more efficient. Think about industries like large-scale food production or fast fashion, which have huge environmental footprints. Optimizing logistics, reducing waste, cutting energy use across those networks. AI could play a role there.
So there is definitely potential for AI to do good on the environmental front.
Undeniably, the potential is there.
Which brings us back to that central dilemma, doesn't it? This critical question: how do we balance these two powerful forces? AI's significant growing environmental costs versus its very real potential to provide environmental solutions.
That is precisely the core challenge, and it's incredibly complex, not least because right now we don't really have any widely accepted, standardized ways to measure an AI system's total climate impact.
Total impact.
Meaning a framework that properly accounts for both the costs, the energy, the water, the materials, the waste, and the potential benefits, like enabling renewable energy or optimizing resource use. It's really hard to do that calculation accurately.
Why is it so hard? Is the data not available?
Transparency is a huge issue. Reporting on an AI's carbon footprint, for example, is notoriously difficult. Often it just gets lumped into a company's overall data center footprint, which includes lots of other non-AI stuff. And different companies use different methods, often quite opaque ones, for calculating and reporting their emissions and resource use.
So it's hard to compare apples to apples or even see the whole apple sometimes.
Exactly. This lack of transparency makes a genuine, holistic assessment incredibly difficult. And beyond measurement, there's this growing debate among experts. Do these AI for good applications, the green uses, actually offset the massive primary footprint of building and running the AI itself?
Are the benefits big enough to outweigh the costs?
That's the question. Some critics argue that while these green applications are promising, many are still experimental or just not deployed at a scale anywhere near large enough to counteract the sheer energy and water demands of global AI systems that are running 24/7. It's a really tough equation, and we desperately need more transparency, better metrics, and a truly holistic view to figure out if AI will ultimately be a net positive or a net negative for the planet's climate.
Okay, so given these complexities, these costs and benefits, what are governments and regulators doing? Are they starting to pay attention to AI's environmental side?
They definitely are. It feels like a significant shift is happening. What was maybe a blind spot in policy discussions just a few years ago is now becoming a much more central focus.
Where are we seeing this focus? Let's start with the U.S.
In the U.S., we saw the Artificial Intelligence Environmental Impacts Act of 2024 proposed in the Senate. It didn't ultimately get reintroduced, but its goal was significant. It would have required federal agencies like the EPA, NIST, the Department of Energy to actually study and report on AI's environmental effects.
Mandating research and reporting.
Exactly. And it proposed setting up a voluntary reporting system for companies to disclose their AI-related environmental impacts. So even though it didn't pass, the fact that it was proposed shows this is getting onto the legislative radar at the federal level.
What about at the state level? Anything happening there?
Yes, with federal action lagging, some states are definitely stepping up, especially those heavily impacted by data center growth. Virginia is a key example.
Right. Data Center Alley again.
Precisely. Because they're such a huge hub, they're actively considering legislation that would force data centers to report how much water and energy they're actually using. This comes directly from growing concerns among local communities and lawmakers about the strain on resources and land use.
So demanding transparency from the data centers.
Yes. The state's own Legislative Review Commission, JLRC, officially recommended mandatory reporting to tackle the strain these facilities cause. There was another bill, HB 2035, that would have required quarterly reports on water and energy use made publicly available.
Did that pass?
It didn't, I believe. And interestingly, a different Virginia bill that proposed a mandatory state approval process for any new data center over 100 megawatts was actually voted down in committee.
Why?
The main concern cited was that too much regulation might scare off future tech investment. So it really highlights this tricky balancing act policymakers are facing, how to manage the impacts without hindering economic growth.
Okay, so the U.S. is starting to grapple with it, state by state mostly. What about Europe? They often seem ahead on environmental regulations.
They generally are, and AI is no exception. The EU has taken a much more proactive and integrated approach. Their big overarching strategy, the European Green Deal from 2020, explicitly includes using AI and other digital tech to help achieve their sustainability goals across the board.
So seeing AI as part of the solution from the start.
Very much so. A key part of this is something called the Green Deal Data Space, or GDDS. It's this really ambitious project to gather massive amounts of environmental and climate data from all different sectors across Europe,
Why gather all that data?
so that AI agents can analyze it. The idea is to use AI to find hidden trends, pinpoint systemic problems, and generate really well-informed policy recommendations to accelerate the green transition.
Using AI to guide green policy? That's quite forward-thinking.
It is. And policy research done for the European Commission actually suggests they should go even further. They recommend potentially restricting market access within the EU for AI systems that don't meet certain standards, like implementing global emissions monitoring or having clear reduction strategies.
So using market access as leverage for sustainability.
Exactly. They're also pushing hard for things like mandated efficiency improvements for AI, requiring companies to report sustainability metrics consistently, and developing standardized lifecycle assessments for all AI hardware and software. Really pushing for a comprehensive accountability model.
Are individual EU countries doing things too?
Yes, absolutely. Many member states have built sustainability right into their national AI strategies, showing this kind of top-down and bottom-up approach. France, for instance, strongly advocates for designing AI and data systems sustainably from day one. They support making ecological data public for transparency and boosting AI for grid efficiency.
Okay, France is focused on sustainable design. What about Germany?
Germany's national AI strategy, updated in 2020, has whole sections dedicated to using AI for energy efficiency, conservation, promoting a circular economy where waste is minimized, and achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They even have a specific funding program called AI Lighthouses that gives grants to projects using AI for environmental solutions. It's already funded over 70 million euros worth of projects.
Funding green AI directly. Italy.
Italy is also explicitly linking its AI research and development efforts to achieving those UN Sustainable Development Goals, using government stimulus money to encourage AI applications focused on sustainability.
So it really seems like across Europe, the environmental impact of AI isn't just an afterthought. It's becoming a core part of their digital strategy.
Absolutely. It demonstrates clearly that this issue is moving rapidly from being sort of ignored or treated as a side issue in the tech world to becoming a central, undeniable focus in policy discussions globally. It's this fundamental recognition that the digital revolution, even though it feels virtual, has very real, very tangible physical consequences that demand our urgent attention and proactive governance.
Okay. We have covered a lot of ground today, a really deep dive into this incredible, but also incredibly complex world of artificial intelligence.
We certainly have.
From those, frankly, dizzying valuations, the trillions potentially pouring into the infrastructure.
Trillions with a T. Still hard to fathom.
Right. All the way to the very real and accelerating demands AI is placing on our planet's energy and water. It's just this story of unprecedented growth, amazing innovation, but also profound challenge.
We explored Sam Altman's really candid warnings about that potential bubble, the truly mind-boggling scale of data center expansion happening worldwide,
Yeah.
and that environmental footprint. It really is a textbook example of the Jevons paradox in action, isn't it? Where efficiency gains just seem to fuel even more demand.
It really does feel like that. But we also look at the other side, the really cutting-edge, innovative solutions being chased to tackle these challenges.
Yeah.
Nuclear power making a comeback, maybe even data centers in space.
Yeah, some really ambitious thinking. And we saw those early but growing regulatory frameworks emerging around the world trying to get a handle on AI's environmental side.
So for you, our listener, hopefully the takeaway is clear. The future of AI. It's not just about clever software and algorithms living in the cloud.
Not at all.
It's deeply, fundamentally tied to our physical world, to our energy grids, our water supplies, and increasingly to our environmental policies. Understanding AI fully means you have to look at both sides, the almost boundless potential, but also the very tangible, sometimes surprising costs.
Yeah, the whole picture, the excitement and the externalities.
Exactly. So as we wrap up, maybe a final thought to leave people with.
Okay. Well, if we connect all these threads, the sheer scale of this AI infrastructure build-out, it really is historic. You used the comparison earlier. It's It truly does resemble past industrial revolutions that completely reshaped the world. The railroads, the electrical grid.
A fundamental shift.
Right. And that raises this really important, maybe provocative question for you, the listener, to think about as you watch all this unfold. Can we actually innovate fast enough? Can we develop new energy sources, manage resources more effectively, create smarter environmental governance quickly enough to keep pace with AI's exponential growth? Or will AI's own ambition ultimately be constrained, limited by the hard realities of our planet's finite capacity?
Can our physical world sustain the exponential demands of the virtual one? That's a powerful question.
It's something to really mull over, I think.
We invite you to do just that. Mull on that thought as you continue to observe and interact with this rapidly evolving and ever more impactful world of artificial intelligence.